2026, a year history will remember as the moment the world's delicate balance finally broke. The conflict didn't start with a bang, but with a series of miscalculations that spiraled out of control. Tensions in the Strait of Hormuz reached a breaking point, threatening the world's most vital energy artery. When diplomacy failed, the machinery of war, dormant for decades in this scale, began to churn. The first strikes were surgical, targeting command and control centers across the region. But this was a new kind of war. Cyber attacks crippled infrastructure before the first missile even landed. Within hours, global markets reacted. Oil prices surged to unprecedented heights, sending shockwaves through every economy. By day 2, what many hoped would be a localized incident had become a global emergency. Alliances were tested. Nations were forced to choose sides in a conflict that threatened to engulf the entire globe. In cities thousands of miles away, the reality of the situation began to set in as supply chains fractured. 1 week in, the world was unrecognizable. The day the world changed was no longer a headline. It was reality. Diplomatic channels were frayed, with veteran negotiators describing the atmosphere as the darkest hour since the Cold War. High-altitude drones monitored every movement, making traditional surprise maneuvers nearly impossible. This was a war of sensors and algorithms, where victory was measured in milliseconds and terabytes. Energy grids became the primary targets, leaving millions in the dark and testing the resilience of modern society. The information war was just as fierce, with deepfakes and propaganda flooding digital spaces, making truth the first casualty. Knowing what was actually happening on the ground became a challenge, even for the most sophisticated intelligence agencies. The human cost began to mount. Displacement on a massive scale created a humanitarian crisis that transcended borders. Trade routes that had been active for centuries were closed overnight, forcing a radical reorganization of global commerce. The economic consequences were not just numbers on a screen, they were felt at every kitchen table across the world. In response, a global movement for peace emerged, louder and more desperate than anything seen in recent history. From space, the conflict was invisible, yet its impact was changing the very face of human civilization below. The question was no longer who would win, but what would be left of the world order we once knew. The physical battlefields were often remote, but the emotional and social impact reached every corner of the Earth. Technology, once seen as a tool for progress, was now being optimized for the most efficient forms of destruction. 2026 serves as a stark reminder of how quickly the world we take for granted can be swept away. Yet, even in the darkest hours, the human spirit's capacity for resilience and its demand for peace remains. The path forward requires more than just surviving the conflict. It requires rebuilding a world that chooses cooperation over combat. Because the day the world changed forever was also the day we realized just how much we have to lose. Join the discussion below. How do we ensure this remains a what if? Thanks for watching.